hit subscribe. Because once you know what really happened behind these walls, you'll never sleep the same again. The first scream came just before dawn. Guards sprinted to the corridor of San Quentin's East Block, a concrete maze that smelled of sweat, bleach, and fear. By the time they reached cell 213, the floor was slick with blood. 2 inmates were inside. One was already dead, his throat cut with a weapon no one could find. The other, Michael Moose Drayton, a lifer with Aryan Brotherhood tattoos crawling up his neck, stood calm, his eyes empty. It should have been another prison killing. But what the investigators found next changed everything. Drayton's mattress was slit open, and inside, wrapped in plastic, were coded letters, prison kites. Each contained lists of names, numbers, and payments. And at the bottom of every sheet was the same symbol, a cloverleaf with the number 666 scrawled inside it, the Aryan Brotherhood signature. Within hours, federal agents from the FBI's Organized Crime Unit arrived. The Bureau had been chasing the Brotherhood for years, but no one had ever gotten this close. Those letters were the first crack in the Empire's armor, proof that its leaders were still running a criminal network from inside solitary confinement. Agent Lisa Monroe, a quiet but relentless investigator, took charge of the case. She'd spent a decade studying the gang's coded systems, how orders travel from cell to cell, smuggled through Bible pages or hidden inside artwork. If you think you've caught one, she told her team, you've probably missed 5. Monroe's first discovery came fast. One of the coded names matched a correctional officer, Daniel Reyes, a guard with a clean record but unusual bank deposits. Surveillance showed him taking unscheduled trips to the mailroom, always on days certain inmates received letters from other facilities. When Monroe confronted him, Reyes cracked. He admitted to being a mule, moving messages for inmates in exchange for money. But before he could reveal who gave the orders, his car exploded in the prison parking lot. A homemade bomb rigged beneath the driver's seat. The Brotherhood had silenced him before he could talk. The warden ordered an immediate lockdown. Every cell was searched, every piece of mail confiscated. But the gang's communication didn't stop. It shifted. Hidden messages began appearing in the prison chapels and books, carved into benches, disguised as religious verses. The Brotherhood had anticipated this. They were 10 steps ahead. Monroe knew she wasn't chasing common criminals. She was up against an organization that thrived on fear, loyalty, and blood oaths that went deeper than any law. The letters were only the beginning, whispers of a larger conspiracy that stretched beyond San Quentin's walls. Late that night, a guard handed Monroe a small envelope found under an inmate's bed. Inside was a photo, the warden, sitting in his office, laughing with 2 men. Both had the Brotherhood's cloverleaf tattoos on their hands. Scrawled across the back were 5 chilling words. Everyone answers to someone higher. Monroe looked up from the photo, heart pounding. The killing in cell 213 wasn't a message, it was a warning. And somewhere inside San Quentin, the real power was watching her every move. By sunrise, San Quentin looked less like a prison and more like a war zone. Armed guards patrolled every tier, metal detectors buzzed nonstop, and inmates were forced to strip down in the yard under cold morning light. But even with lockdown in place, Agent Lisa Monroe knew one truth. If the Aryan Brotherhood wanted to send a message, it was already sent. She sat inside the warden's office, staring at the photo found under the inmate's bed. The warden, Frank Doyle, had served over 20 years without a single mark on his record. But the men in that photo, both known Brotherhood shot callers, were supposed to be locked up in different facilities hundreds of miles apart. There was no logical explanation for how they could be in the same picture with him. Unless, of course, the Brotherhood's reach went much deeper than anyone imagined. The FBI's cyber unit began decrypting the letters found in Michael Moose Drayton's cell. What they uncovered was staggering. Each note used a system called dead chain coding. Messages passed between 5 or more people, where no one carrier knew the full meaning. A guard, an inmate, even a chaplain, each played a small, seemingly innocent role. By the time a message reached its destination, it had traveled through states, prisons, and sometimes through free world civilians who had no idea they were moving criminal orders. One code led Monroe to Lompoc Federal Correctional Complex, a a facility over 300 miles away. There, she interviewed an inmate named Eddie Trigger Knox, a former enforcer who had left the Brotherhood after surviving a failed hit. Knox was missing 2 fingers and carried a deep scar across his jaw, but his eyes were sharp. "You think it's about race?" he said. "That's a lie they sell. It's business. Pure business. You cut off 1 head, 2 more grow back." He told Monroe about the Table, an internal council of 7 men who ran the Brotherhood like a corporation. Each one oversaw a different territory, from drug smuggling in state prisons to contract killings on the outside. "Most of them ain't even in the yard," Knox said. "They're ghosts, locked down 23 hours a day, but they still run the streets." When Monroe pressed for names, Knox hesitated. Then he slid a folded note across the table. "Find this address," he said quietly, "but don't go at night." The address led to an auto shop in Bakersfield, California. The place looked abandoned. Rusted tools, broken lights, a layer of dust on everything. But hidden behind a false wall, Monroe's team found what looked like a command center. Multiple phones, burner SIM cards, stacks of envelopes, and a prison visitation schedule pinned to a wall with photos of Brotherhood inmates circled in red ink. The shop owner, a man named Clint Red Walters, was arrested trying to flee the scene. During interrogation, he refused to speak until Monroe showed him the evidence connecting his shop to prison payoffs and multiple wire transfers overseas. Finally, his face broke. "You don't get it," he said. "You think they're just some prison gang. But the Brotherhood ain't behind bars anymore. They're everywhere. Politicians, cops, businesses. Hell, they own half of what you think is clean." Before Monroe could press him further, Walters leaned in and whispered, "Check your phone." She looked down. A new message flashed on her screen. No caller ID. Just 1 line of text. "Back off, or you'll end up like Reyes." Her stomach turned cold. Reyes, the guard who'd been blown up before he could testify. Someone was watching her in real time. As Monroe looked through the glass at Walters, he smirked. "Told you," he said softly. "They already know you're coming." That night, she sat in her motel room, files scattered across the bed. The pieces didn't fit, unless the corruption stretched beyond the prison system itself. The photo of Warden Doyle haunted her. His laughter in that picture didn't look nervous. It looked complicit. At 2:47 a.m., Monroe's burner phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a threat. It was a video. She hit play and froze. On screen was Warden Frank Doyle inside his office, shaking hands with a man wearing a Brotherhood tattoo on his hand. The camera angle was from the ceiling, from the FBI's own surveillance feed. Someone inside her own team had sent it. She whispered, barely breathing, "How deep does this go?" Then the video glitched. Static. A final frame appeared. Words scratched into the pixels like a warning. "He's not the only one." The motel lights flickered as Agent Lisa Monroe replayed the corrupted video again and again, each time hoping for a clue she'd missed. The sight of Warden Frank Doyle shaking hands with a marked Aryan Brotherhood member was damning. But what terrified her more was a note at the end. "He's not the only one." She didn't sleep that night. By dawn, she was already driving back toward San Quentin, a storm brewing over the bay. She needed to confront Doyle face-to-face before word of the investigation leaked. But halfway through the bridge, her car dashboard lit up, engine failure. She pulled over, heart pounding. Something wasn't right. As she stepped out, a black SUV slowed down behind her. No plates, no sound, just silence. Then it sped away. When she reached the prison, Doyle was waiting, too calm, too rehearsed. His tone was polite, but his eyes were sharp. "You've been digging into things above your clearance, Agent Monroe," he said. "That's dangerous, especially here." She dropped the photo and the video stills on his desk. "Tell me how deep it goes. How much are they paying you?" Doyle didn't flinch. "You think this is about money?" he said. "It's about survival. You try running a facility full of monsters. You start making deals with the devils who can keep it from burning down." He leaned closer. "You think you're on the right side, but there are no sides here. Just power and who gets to keep it." Before Monroe could answer, the alarm blared. A riot had erupted on C Block. She ran to the security monitor and froze. Inmates weren't fighting each other. They were moving in formation. Every corridor, every stairwell, each man following silent commands. It wasn't chaos. It was choreography. "This isn't a riot," she muttered. "It's a cover." The Brotherhood had staged the outbreak to erase evidence and witnesses. One of the guards on her informant list, Officer Hughes, was cornered in the mess hall. The security feed cut to static seconds before his camera went dark. Monroe grabbed her weapon and headed for the lower tiers. The smell of smoke and blood filled the corridors. Inmates shouted over blaring sirens, but beneath it all, there was order, messages being passed in coded shouts. She reached the records office just as a group of masked inmates were setting fire to boxes of case files. She fired a warning shot, scattering them, but one man stopped and turned. His arm bore the Brotherhood's lightning bolts, but his face was unmistakable. It was Warden Doyle. He wasn't being coerced. He was leading them. Monroe lunged forward, knocking him to the ground. The two struggled amid burning papers and smoke. "You built this," she shouted. "You turned a prison into an empire." Doyle grinned through bloody teeth. "No, Agent, I just kept the peace. Without us, the whole system collapses. You'll see." He pressed something into her hand, a small flash drive, and whispered, "You want the truth? Follow the money." Before she could react, he shoved her back and disappeared into the firestorm. Seconds later, the roof above the records office caved in. Doyle was gone. Days later, Monroe sat before a federal tribunal. The flash drive loaded on screen. Inside were encrypted bank transfers, political donations, and offshore accounts, all linked to Brotherhood-controlled shell companies. The names were staggering. Corporate contractors, local law enforcement officials, even state politicians. The Brotherhood wasn't just a prison gang. It was a network, a silent machine moving money and power through the justice system itself. The Bureau sealed the files as classified. Publicly, they announced only that a small group of corrupt officials had been removed. But Monroe knew better. The men who truly ran the Brotherhood weren't behind bars. They were sitting in boardrooms, smiling for cameras. That night, she returned to her motel. A letter lay on her bed, no address, no stamp. Inside, a single sentence was typed on white paper. "You cut off one head. We grow two." She looked out the window at the highway stretching into darkness. The sound of distant sirens faded into the wind. Somewhere, deep inside another prison, another deal was being made, another life traded for silence. She whispered to herself, "The empire never ended. It just learned to wear a suit." And as the scene faded, the last line appeared across the screen. If you think this story was intense, you're not ready for what comes next. Hit subscribe, because the next empire is already being built.